Hi,
Hi.
Miss.
Hi, there you are.
I'm a little
Okay.
nervous, but I'm okay. What about you?
I'm okay too. Your test is tomorrow, right?
Yeah, it's at 9 o'clock.
9 in the morning.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so you're gonna sleep well, get rest.
yeah. Today, all the day, I was studying, practicing, and I'm
Really?
so nervous. I don't know, but yes.
Oh my gosh. But after this, you should actually, I think it's better, the day before to just relax and chill out because otherwise you're gonna be, your brain is gonna be tired for tomorrow. So just try to get some sleep, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. After this, I think I'm going to go sleep and
Yeah, you
yeah.
should. You're gonna be fine, no worries. It's gonna
Yeah,
be.
I know I have to believe in myself and
Yes,
be
that's it.
relaxed. And
Exactly.
everything is going to be fine.
Yes. Okay. So we're gonna be practicing. I think you must remember what this was about. We're gonna be doing task 4, the last one. So it was the one where you have just the lecture, remember, and you just have two topics and you summarize all of them. You remember you got the template and everything? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question that I have is always is going to be 2 subtopics.
Yeah. In this task, yes, it is always gonna be.
And other thing I want to ask, do you know if I could like they are telling me the instruction, and when they are telling me the instruction, I could like structure my notes, like I don't know, put in rows and something like that.
Uh, like you mean after you hear the lecture?
No, it's like, digamos, me van a decir la instrucción de que van a hablar sobre una lectura. Entonces, en ese cachito puedo hacer como que mi estructura de cómo voy a hacer.
Yes, 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 of course.
Ah,
I think it's gonna be a problem. Yeah.
no.
Okay. So maybe we can do. Okay.
Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class.
Okay, ever thought about the things that happen to you and what's responsible for them? We psychologists have a term, locus of control. Locus of control refers to where people think control over their lives comes from, whether it comes from themselves or from somewhere else. People who think that control is in themselves are internals, and people who think it comes from somewhere else are externals. Let's say there are 2 people going for job interviews. One of them is an internal. She has an internal locus of control. Since she thinks that control comes from within herself, she'll believe that her success and her preparation are really her responsibility. So she's likely to really work on her interview skills ahead of time. Then, if she gets the job, she'll believe that it's because she's worked so hard. And if she doesn't get it, well, she'll probably be disappointed with herself and try to figure out how she can improve for the next time. Okay. And another job candidate is an external. He perceives other things, say, his interviewers, to have more influence. After all, it's their decision. It depends on what mood they're in and, luck. Now, with his external locus of control, he's not as hard on himself, so he's more likely to take risks. He might interview for a job that he's not completely qualified for, and if he gets it, he'll think he's really lucky, and because he believes external forces are in control, he might think it's because the interviewers were having a good day. If he doesn't get it, he'll probably blame the interviewers or bad luck rather than look at himself and try to figure out what he could have done better.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain internal control.
Locus of control, that is the definition of the control of the yourself, how things happen. After introduction of topic.
I'm so sorry. Did you get to hear the whole lecture?
Yeah.
Okay, then you can start speaking. No, go ahead.
The lecture is about locus of control, and it's the definition of control of how these happen things to all the people. After introduction the topic, the professor features two subtopics. To start, the lecture describes the one type of person that are internal and are the people who think that all the things that happen to them are because their own success. And to illustrate it better, he compares two type of people and how they experiment a situation about getting a job. And this person sees that if she gets the job, it's going to be their own goal, and is because she. And on the other hand, is the external person, and in this way, thinks that all the things happen with external things. To illustrate it, if the other person to go to this interview and thinks that if he gets the job, it's an external force and it's only luck.
Okay, great. So I like counting you're good with that. You understood the whole thing. Now I think maybe you can organize it better, especially when you have psychology. The good thing we're going to be practicing, since we're going to be taking two, we're going to practice biology, psychology, and business probably. So when you have psychology, usually the examples are the same, and in business too. So instead of telling me but because you said, okay, so external people think this and this and that, and then you told me what the example was. So try to say that at the beginning. So you could say, the lecture is about locus of control. To illustrate this concept, the professor provides the example of two people at a job interview. And then you say, first, he explains that external people do this, and they believe this. So the external person will will believe that if he gets the job. So then you don't have to explain. All right, you can say in there, I like the transition you're using on the other hand, because you have opposing ideas, so it makes sense. And regarding grammar, remember, try not to say so much all the people or the people. You could say everyone, everybody, or yeah, just that, and careful with person and people, those things.
Yeah.
But everything else I think is fine. So just careful with your timing.
Yeah.
Summarize a bit more. Okay. All right. Let's do let's do a biology one. I think those are the hardest ones. So
okay.
Maybe 50. In this case, when you have biology, you probably will have two animals or two plants illustrating. So in this case, you cannot really do that, but just try to, even if you don't understand the example, just try to catch the names of the animals. And sometimes they're in the question, so you can also refer to them very quickly. Okay, let's see. Okay.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Birds have some of the best vision capabilities in the animal kingdom. Some bird species have vision that is 8 to 10 times greater than humans. Overall, a bird's eyes are extremely important for its survival. One aspect of birds' eyes that plays a role in helping them survive, in other words, to find food or to avoid predators, is the position of the eyes in the skull. Some birds have eyes that face forward on the skull, kind of similar to how humans' eyes are positioned. Forward-facing eyes allow a bird to clearly see and judge distances because it can focus on objects with both of its eyes and correctly perceive height, width, and depth. One type of bird with eyes positioned in the front of the skull is the hawk. Hawks eat animals like mice. Hawks have such good eyesight that they can spot a tiny mouse in a field from high up in the air. They spot the mouse and swoop down to catch it. Without such good eyesight, they would not be able to spot or catch their food. Other birds have eyes that are located on each side of the skull. This positioning of the eyes can help a bird to avoid predators. Instead of just seeing what's directly in front, they can see things that are on either side, permitting them to watch for danger in all directions. Imagine a duck wading near the edge of a lake. It needs to spend time eating grasses and insects, but it also is on constant lookout for danger from its predator, like the fox. An eye on each side of the duck's head allows it to see a fox approaching from either side. If it spots a fox, it can then fly away to safety. The placement of the eyes are critical in helping the duck avoid predators.
Using the examples in the lecture, explain how the position of birds' eyes is critical to their survival.
Okay, now I'll give you 30 seconds to prepare. Okay, so if you're ready, please start speaking now.
The lecture is about birds and how they have capital abilities to their eyes to survive. First, the professor states the position of the eyes skill that is so important because with this they can look for food and see all the predators, and they can like see the distance and look all the things and avoid all the predators. On the other hand, the professor talked about the hawk and how this is so important for the birds. Also, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing an example of a dog, how a dog is eating and how it's like also relaxing, but it's like seeing all the things, like if is in danger and see if there is a predator.
Okay, all right. So, okay, great. So I think you're just having some trouble organizing your ideas. Remember that you always have 2 subtopics, and you want to make your speech structure that way. So you say first, and on the other hand, or second, or also, and that's it. Because at the beginning you say first, and then you talked to me about the bird's position, but that was the topic, right? So when you say first, you got to start with the first one. So, okay, I think in this case it was, okay, the lecture is about bird's eye position and how that's critical to their survival. Remember, that's in the question. You can just repeat that. The lecture is about how the position of bird's eye is critical to their survival. And then you can say, first, the professor talks about, I don't know, when the bird has their eyes on the front, and that was the first subtopic, right? And he mentions how hawks, and you did mention that, so that's great. Or how that, I don't know, hawks' eyes help them catch their prey, right? They are the predators, and they catch the prey. So, and the second one was the duck. So the second one is how some other animals have their eyes on the sides, such as the duck, and that helps them avoid being, caught by predators. So for biology ones, you're gonna see a lot about predators and prey. So practice the pronunciation of those words.
It's predator.
Predators, yes, predators.
And
it's just like in Spanish, maybe.
Predators. Okay, and prey.
Yes. And careful with using the same template than in question 3, right? Because I think you said further illustrates this concept by providing an example. Careful with that.
Yeah.
Okay, but the good thing, I'm looking at time, and Matthias was next, but he's not joining. So if you want, we can continue practicing.
Yeah, if we can, of course.
Yeah, because the good thing as well is that you're also next to Matthias, so we're gonna have a bit more time.
Okay, it's perfect to me.
All right then. So, okay, let's continue with biology. That's the hard one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's listen to this.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Today I want to talk about seabirds. Now, seabirds hunt and eat fish, and, well, their food can be hard to find because their food source is spread out over a large expanse of water. So what seabirds have done is that over time they've made adaptations. They've developed special characteristics that help them find food. One adaptation involves the length of the bird's wings. The albatross, for example, is a large seabird that spends most of its life flying over ocean waters in search of food, fish to feed itself, and to carry back to the nest for its chicks. Now, most birds flap their wings up and down when they fly, which uses up a lot of energy. But the albatross has these special long wings that it can hold perfectly still. It's able to fly without moving its wings up and down. These long wings allow it to glide or float on the wind, and this uses very little energy. This is important because, as I said, the albatross has to cover a huge expanse of ocean to locate food, sometimes up to 1,100 miles a day. Because of its long wings, it can glide along over the ocean, using little energy as it searches for food. Another important adaptation of many seabirds is an acute, highly developed sense of smell. Take the fulmar. Like the albatross, the fulmar needs to find food that's scattered far out over the ocean. But the fulmar has a rather unusual advantage. It has tiny tubes inside the nose holes in its beak, and these special tube-shaped nostrils help it to pick up the scent of food. Now, this highly developed sense of smell is especially important because the fulmar's main source of food, plankton, are tiny organisms that are hard to see, but they give off a very sharp, distinctive odor. So when fulmars are flying around looking for food, they may not be able to see them, but they can find the plankton by smelling them, even from far away.
Using the examples of the albatross and the fulmar, explain two special adaptations that have developed to help seabirds find food.
Okay, so now you got 30 seconds to prepare. Okay, so now you can start speaking.
The lecture is about seabirds and how they hunt their food. They talk about all the adaptation that have these birds. First, the professor talks about the length of the wing, how long it is, and how this could help to the bird to fly in a huge ocean to cover all and to catch all their food. And this because in the other hand, little wings consumes a lot of energy. In the other hand, talk about the sense of smell, how the fulmar have this tiny thing, search tiny things, and how he smell this to find their food.
Okay. Okay. So great. I think this time was a lot more organized. You had those two subtopics well marked and well noticeable, so that's good. And you also got the examples too, and you know they were in the question itself. And I like the way that you explained them because they do mention a lot of details that are maybe hard to remember, but you talked about the relevant information. You know, for instance, at the beginning you said, so first the professor talks about the length of the wings. And then you say, this is important due to the fact that, I don't know, birds have to cover a huge amount of ocean to find their food. And then you can, if you don't remember how the example was, for instance, in the fulmar, you could just say, and he illustrates this with the example of the albatross, I don't know. And they do that. So yeah, I think it was really good this time. Careful with some grammar at the beginning, careful with this structure. You know, for instance, you said, the lecture is about, I think, seabirds and how they, okay, where I got my notes here. So yeah, the adaptations that have these birds. So the adaptation that these birds have, right? Careful with that structure. And careful that when you're gonna move on to the second one, you don't just say, and talk about this. And he talks about that, okay? So careful with those reporting verbs. And I think will be good.
Okay. Instead of saying that, I can say, secondly, he explains about the sense of the smell.
Yes, of course you can know. So Matthias must join in, but he left the meeting, so I'm probably gonna talk to him.
Okay.
Let's do one more. Want to keep doing biology?
Yeah, I think we could do our biology one, and then we could do business.
Okay.
Or if you want, whatever. So,
Okay, no, I think one more biology would be good. Yes. Okay.
Listen to part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
A lot of plants and animals live near the surface of the ocean, and that means there's a lot of food near the surface because there are lots of plants and animals to eat. But if you go down to the deepest parts of the ocean, it's cold and dark, and there's not a lot living down there, so food is very scarce. So organisms that live down at these great depths have developed special adaptations to help them survive in this environment where food is so hard to find. For example, many deep-sea organisms have body features that enable them to eat prey that are larger than themselves. A good example, there's a species of eel that has an enormous mouth and a large stomach that's capable of expanding. And these unusual features allow this eel to eat prey larger than itself. That's a big advantage, because if the eel eats something big, that's a lot of food, a lot of nutrition. So the eel can go for quite a while before it has to find food again. Another helpful adaptation in some deep-sea organisms is the ability to generate light. And some organisms use that light to help them capture food. For example, there's a kind of fish called the anglerfish. And on its head, this fish has a little structure that produces light, that glows in the dark. This little structure, this little light, is positioned close to the fish's mouth. Other fish are attracted to this light. They think it's something small they can eat. So they swim straight toward it. And that brings them close enough for the anglerfish to capture them and eat them.
Using the examples of the eel and the anglerfish, explain two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the deepest parts of the ocean.
Okay. Now you have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so if you're ready, please start speaking now.
The lecture is about how animals survive in the deepest of the ocean and how they have to have adaptation to survive. First, the professor talks about how they can eat some amount of things that are larger than theirs, and how this allow to things to eat something big. In the other hand, secondly, the professor talked about how some fishes generate light, and this is because they can capture some food. And to illustrate it better, there is the fish called anglerhead, and this fish have glows in his head, and also this attract to other fish to go, and he could eat this fish to survive.
Okay, great. So you have improved a lot in terms of structure. Now it was a lot more clear. You had your ideas organized. Everything was great. Don't forget though to mention the names of the animals. You did mention the second one, but I don't know if that's the name. Remember the anglerfish, and the first one was the eel. Don't forget to mention it.
Okay.
Very quick to say such as the eel, or the professor mentions the eel. Careful with the pronouns when we're talking about animals. Try to make them plural. So instead of saying he could eat or his head, just try to say they or their, themselves. Okay, make everything plural. Remember that fish is also plural, right? So fish is singular and plural both.
Okay.
And remember that the transition is on the other hand, not in that one. And yeah, so just that, don't forget to mention them, even if it's quickly. Careful with the transition and the pronouns, mainly.
Okay.
Okay. All right then. Any questions so far?
I think no. I think everything is okay. I don't know if I could show you like my template for my writing, for my integrated and my independent, to show you how I organized and if it's okay.
Yeah, of course. Do you have it in a document or you wanna?
Yeah, I have in a document, so I could share my screen.
Yes, of course. Let me. Okay, give me a sec.
Mm,
Okay, now you can share your screen.
oh. I don't know what happened. Ya sé qué pasó un ratito. Es que justo para el examen me piden que no puedo compartir pantalla. O sea, la opción para compartir pantalla de Zoom tiene que estar desactivada. Entonces, ahorita voy a poner. Ahora voy a tratar. Okay, this is for the integrated. It's like this article introduces the topic of the lecturer in the listening passage disagrees or agrees, depending. He believes or she believes and attacks each of the flaws made in the reading. In the
Okay.
reading, bueno, no sé.
Okay, that's good. I like your I like the way that you're giving a bit of context and then stating the claims. I would change this article to the article
Okay.
because it's like more general. And the lecture in the listening passage. Okay, it's not a passage. So you could just say in the list. Passage is always written. So you could say the lecture in the listening, but I don't like in the listening, to be honest. So you could just say the lecturer
Okay.
disagrees. I think it's a bit redundant. He
Okay.
believes in attacks. About the word attacks, I'm not sure if that's the word.
Okay.
Sure. Could be,
It could,
I don't know, I'm thinking objects, but maybe there are others. Let me look for.
okay.
Okay. Because attack sounds a bit too much, like too violent. Okay. Okay, you could say yes, object, protests, that's a good one, yeah. Opposed, okay, so where is it? Or condemn, or disapproves, or takes a stand against. Yeah, all of those are good, but maybe, yeah, which you like better?
Okay.
Okay, that's good. Each of the flaws are like defectos, right? Why flaws?
Or it could be each of the points made in a reading.
Okay, yes, it could be points. Okay, let's look for synonyms. I'm gonna look for arguments. Okay, could be. Yeah, you could say points, arguments, evidence to, or grounds, or claims. Yeah, one of those.
Okay. Each of the points made in the reading. Yeah, actually ground I'm using here in the end. So I think it's going to be good points here.
Okay, all right. So what else? What else have we got?
Reading, the author begins stating that the lecturer, however, disagrees. he believes that, blah, blah, blah. He goes on to say that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's good. Yeah, in the reading effort begins because it begins by stating that the lecturer, however, disagrees. He believes that, yeah, that's good. On the other hand, the author claims that. Good. Don't forget the comma after on the other hand. After every transition that you use, you need a comma.
Okay.
So again, comma, the professor believes.
Okay. Blah, blah.
Yeah. I think you're using a bit too much believes. Maybe look for another one.
Okay. Okay. I will find some synonym of that.
Okay, I like that the position of the reading is flawed. I think that's good. Yeah, now I get what you meant with flaws. So that the position of the reading, maybe the position taken by the author.
The position. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Taken by the author.
But taken, like the past part is full of taken. There you go.
Okay.
The author without of the reading, just the author is flawed.
See.
Yeah, it's flawed. Great. So he holds that. That's a good verb. Yeah, he holds. Now to sum up, both the writer and professor dispute about. It is clear that they will have problems finding a common ground on this issue.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think that's good. You have a conclusion too, that's good. It's clear. All right.
Yeah. And then for independent, well, I was like practicing to memorize, but I don't know. It's this for my introduction, and this is for the first paragraph, second, and this is for my conclusion.
Okay, so no one can deny, okay, like that there are both positive and negative aspects. Okay, I think that preposition of maybe could be about or regarding. That's better than regarding could be, or about, I don't know. If I were forced to choose, I like that structure. If I were forced to choose between, or I would definitely believe that, okay, that's good. It's my firm belief that for a number of reasons that I will develop, maybe elaborate instead of develop.
Sorry, what to say?
Elaborate. Yeah. But with B. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elaborate. Okay.
Okay.
Then it's to begin with, and I could be, for instance, and then as a result of that.
Okay, as a result, right?
Okay.
As a result. Secondly, to illustrate in the light of the above mentioned, great. Of the above mentioned, of the reasons mentioned above, right?
Okay. In light of the
Reasons, yeah, mentioned above.
above, like that, or mentioned.
Reasons mentioned. Of the reasons mentioned above. In light of, don't forget the article of the reasons mentioned above. I strongly believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, so great. I would change the word believe in one of those two because you're using, I definitely believe that, and in the other one as well.
Okay.
And okay, great. I like that you're doing it like a short conclusion. You know, you're not going to summarize both your reasons because we won't have that much time, to be honest. So that's good. Okay, I have a question. At the beginning, are you going to state your position twice? Because you say, I would definitely believe that. Maybe, I don't know, running is better. And then you say, it's my firm belief that. What are you going to do there?
Actually, I think that I'm going to here put my position, and here I'm going to be said because, like it's my firm belief due to the fact that it could be blah 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 blah. I could put my 2 points and
okay.
then, or I don't know, or maybe
Okay.
it's not this.
The thing is, you would have to repeat your position, no? Because it's my first belief that what you have to state your position again, and then you can say due to the fact that. But in order, if you're gonna do that, then you can just say, I would definitely believe that this is better since, and then you state your both your 2 arguments, right? So I don't know, maybe it's gonna make you get confused.
Things,
I like it's my firm belief. I like that phrase even more than I would definitely believe that.
it's
Right.
my firm belief that, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
My friend believe that blah 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 since blah blah blah. For that reasons, I will elaborate. No, ¿cómo es lo otro? Blah, blah, blah. Punto, ¿no? And
Okay,
so,
but if you're gonna summarize your arguments, then you're gonna say for a number of reasons that I will elaborate in the following essay.
no. I think, no sé, o sea, aquí voy a decir, digamos, I'm going to put here my reasons, and then I think for that reasons, I will elaborate. I don't know.
What I would do if I were you, it's yeah, I know. I mean, if you want to use that phrase and you want to summarize your reasons, why don't you do it at the end in the conclusion? So I like, okay, that's maybe you can say it's my firm belief that at the end, instead of I strongly believe, so that you don't have to change the way it was at the beginning.
Okay.
And you can summarize your reasons at the end, but that's the thing, you have in the light of the reasons mentioned above. Okay, I know what you can do. So, okay, I don't know. Let me see if I can. Can I take notes here?
I think yes.
Okay, here it is. So something you can do is at the end you could say, if you want to summarize your reasons, okay, it's too big. Okay, so you could say, in the light of the reasons mentioned above, and then what you can do is use dashes. So I don't have it in my key right now, but in the light of the reasons mentioned above, and then you summarize the reasons. Like, I don't know, if you're talking about running, maybe you could say burning more calories and saving time. I strongly believe, and here you would need, I strongly believe that, and you restate your position, So in that way, you're gonna use this phrase that I like in the light of the reasons mentioned above, and you're also gonna have the chance to summarize your 2 reasons.
okay. Yeah, you're right. You write it because I can't see it.
You cannot see?
No. Yeah. No. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. In the light of the reasons mentioned above, and then you summarize what your reasons are, right? Burning more calories and saving time. And comma, I strongly believe that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No worries.
And yeah, I think that it's all. And I don't know what more to do, or what do you think I could do now, or what tips could you tell me? I don't know.
For the writing, I mean, the quickest thing you can do is just check out some punctuation rules, maybe.
Okay.
Like maybe memorize some words that you're gonna force yourself to use in the writing that are gonna like seem fancy or something. What else? Or phrases, or yeah, like the ones that you have are good. So that's gonna for sure give you some. Okay, like I don't know if I said this in class, but yeah, there are also some other things. For instance, at the beginning, instead of saying if I were forced to choose, I would change that for should I were forced to choose. So whenever you have a conditional, you can change the if for should if it's necessary. So should I? We're forced to choose. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll see you. Okay.
I will talk to you tomorrow and tell you how it goes to me and everything. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thanks for everything. Bye.
Bye bye. Hi, Paula.
Hi, teacher.
Hi. Okay, so today we're going to be practicing task 4, the last one. And this one, what you have to do is, remember, you will listen to a short lecture and you just have to summarize everything. It's all about the lecture. Remember that in the lecture, you got 2 subtopics. It's this one, by the way. So you have 2 subtopics in the lecture, and then you just have to summarize both in your response. So the lecture is about, I don't know, quality. And then you say, to start the lecture, it describes the term, and then the professor goes on to explain in the second subtopic. Do you remember how this was?
Not at all. I think I didn't practice this before, but I will try.
Okay, so you're gonna see with an example. Just try to know the structure. You have an introduction and 2 subtopics. The introduction is not important. Focus on the subtopics and focus on the examples as
well. Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna listen to the lecture now. Take some notes. And here it goes.
Talk.
Okay.
Now listen to part of a talk in a psychology class.
Okay, ever thought about the things that happen to you and what's responsible for them? We psychologists have a term, locus of control. Locus of control refers to where people think control over their lives comes from, whether it comes from themselves or from somewhere else. People who think that People who think that control is in themselves are internals, and people who think it comes from somewhere else are externals. Let's say there are 2 people going for job interviews. One of them is an internal. She has an internal locus of control. Since she thinks that control comes from within herself, she'll believe that her success and her preparation are really her responsibility. So she's likely to really work on her interview skills ahead of time. Then, if she gets the job, she'll believe that it's because she's worked so hard. And if she doesn't get it, well, she'll probably be disappointed with herself and try to figure out how she can improve for the next time. Okay. And another job candidate is an external. He perceives other things, say his interviewers, to have more influence. After all, it's their decision. It depends on what mood they're in and, luck. Now, with his external locus of control, he's not as hard on himself, so he's more likely to take risks. He might interview for a job that he's not completely qualified for, and if he gets it, he'll think he's really lucky, and because he believes external forces are in control, he might think it's because the interviewers were having a good day. And if he doesn't get it, he'll probably blame the interviewers, or bad luck, rather than look at himself and try to figure out what he could have done better.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain internal and external locus of control.
Okay. Now you got 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So if you're ready, please start speaking now.
To start, they explain the laws of control. In this case, we have two types. First, internal self, the other one external. The people who are internal self, they believe in their effort. They believe that all the things that happened is based on their responsibility. On the other hand, we have people who believe in external, and these people is believe more in lucky. They took also more risks. For example, if he or she is applying for a job, if he's not enough qualified, she will apply for that job.
Okay, great. So I like the way you manage your time, and I also like the way you structure your response. You kind of remember, so that's good. What I can tell you, maybe be more specific, a bit more precise or accurate with the examples. When you have these psychology tasks, you usually have the same one for both. So at the beginning, you can introduce the example. You don't have to repeat at the beginning. You could say, the professor illustrates it with the example of two people at a job interview. And you say, first, he explains that external people believe that external forces are responsible for their success or failures. So, I don't know, the person who's at the job interview will believe this. Okay, so don't forget the examples, basically. And at the beginning, try not to start right off with to start, and try to at least once mention the professor. So in a lecture, the professor talks about locus of control. And then you say, first, he, I don't know, explains how external people do this. Okay, careful with the tenses. I noticed that you were mixing them. They took more risks, they take more risks, all right? And instead of, for the pronouns, try to make everything plural and say they. So instead of he or she, because it may be confusing, just say they. They do this, they are this way, and they, okay?
Okay, teacher.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, I was about to see, after I say in the lecture, the professor, I have to, for example, in this case, I could understand that they were speaking about internal and external, but the main topic I couldn't understand. So what can I do in those cases?
To be honest, you don't even have to understand the main topic. You don't have to, they did mention a definition. You know, they said it's locus of control. You know that's the topic because it's in the question. Now, locus of control was where people think their control comes from. So if you think that the control of your life comes from external forces, you're an external. And if you think that it comes from within yourself, then you're an internal. So, but to be completely honest with you, I don't think that's necessary at all. So you can just tell me the name, you know, the lecture is about locus of control. You don't have to explain more. And then you talk about internal and external, which are the most important parts. All right?
Okay.
Okay. So let's do one more. Let me see. Okay.
class.
So when we talk about the demand for a product, we're referring to how much consumers want to buy it, right? And often the demand for a product is influenced by its price. The more expensive it becomes, the less chance that people will want to buy it. Okay, but that's not the whole story. Sometimes the demand for a product can also be influenced by the price of other related products. First, there are those products called substitute goods. If products can be substituted for one another, then then they're called substitute goods. They're similar enough to be interchangeable. And an increase in the price of one means an increase in the demand for the other, like butter and margarine. They're pretty much used for the same purposes. Margarine's a butter substitute, and you can bake equally well with either. Well, when the price of butter goes up, it becomes less affordable, and so what do people do? They buy margarine instead, right? So, you see, an increase in the price of butter increases the demand for margarine. Now, another instance where the price of one product can influence the demand of another is when you have two products that can't be used without each other. That can't be used without each other. Those products we call complement goods. They complement or complete each other, if you will, like compact discs and compact disc players. You need both products in order to use either. So if the price of either product increases, demand for both is likely to decrease. And if the price of CDs goes up, well, demand for them will go down, right? And because CDs and CD players complement each other, what'll also happen is that the demand for CD players will go down too. Players will go down too.
Using the points and examples from the talk, explain how substitute goods and complement goods influence demand for a particular product.
Okay, so if you're ready, please start speaking now.
In the lecture, the professor explains about the demand. The demand is when people buy some products. In this case, we have two. First, we have substitute goods that if this would affect the demand if one product increase the price, so the demand of that product will decrease. On the other hand, we have the complement goods. When we were talking about the demand in the case of complement goods, they are two products that complete each other. In case one of these increase the price, the other one, both products will decrease on the demand.
Okay, so nicely done, Paul. I think that was pretty good. It was a lot more organized than last time, I think. And I like that you're using the template. Careful at the beginning if you're going to use this as your template. The professor explains about, remember that that about is not necessary, explains product demand. And also careful with the topic. In this case, it was not exactly about demand, but it was how some other products influence demand for a product. So you can just read the question and guide you through there. And I like everything else. I think it was pretty good. You made it to the examples and everything. So nice.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
Okay, bye-bye, Paula. See you next session.
We are going to have one more session. No.
Yeah, we have one more.
Oh, okay, teacher. Teacher, in the meantime, can I? The last week I couldn't be in the writing section. So please, can you send me the links of the recording, please?
I will. Okay, I will. Yeah, I will.
Thank you, teacher. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hi, Romina. What's up? Sorry to keep you waiting. Hi there. Okay, so we're gonna hurry up. We're gonna be practicing task 4 today, which is the one where you just have the lecture, if you remember. So they play the lecture for you and you just have to summarize everything. Remember that in the lecture, you will have a short introduction at the beginning and then 2 subtopics and some examples or some details. So what you really want to look through is the examples or the detail. I'm not the details, the subtopics, sorry. So pay attention to those specific terms that you will find there. And sometimes they're in the question, so that may help you. And that's pretty much it. You just have to follow the same structure. You got your template. The lecture is about this. And then you have to start. The lecture talks about substitute goods, which are products that complement each other. For instance, you have butter and margarine. Then the professor explains complement goods, which is products that complement each other. To illustrate, you mentioned cities and I don't know. Okay, so you just gotta follow the structure.
O sea, aquí primero tengo que decir lo que dice, o sea, en general, digamos, y de ahí el profesor.
Yeah, at the beginning, you just have to tell me what the topic is. So let's change this. The lecture is about product demand, or the lecture is about attention, or the lecture is about quality, whatever that is, the general topic. And then you tell me the subtopic. So sometimes this is not necessary, just gonna consume your time. So you can just say to start the lecture describes, and then you go with the first one.
The lecture describes, o sea, hablo de la lecture y de ahí lo que el profesor dice de la lecture.
The lecturer is the professor, by the way.
Yeah.
So you wanna mention the first one. Remember the example we did on class about product? We had reliability and features, right? The lecture describes reliability, which is, I don't know, how trustable your product is.
Okay.
Okay, let's try it with us an example. You're gonna know what I mean.
Okay.
In a psychology class.
Why do we do the things we do? What drives us to participate in certain activities, to buy a certain car, or even to choose a certain career?
No. I'm sorry for that. I myself did. I'm gonna play it again. Okay, here goes again.
And 60 seconds to speak. Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
Why do we do the things we do? What drives us to participate in certain activities, to buy a certain car, or even to choose a certain career? In other words, what motivates us to do what we do? Well, in studies of motivation, psychologists distinguish between two very different types. Our reasons for doing something, our motivations, can be extrinsic. In other words, based on some kind of external reward, like praise or money. Or they can be intrinsic, meaning we engage in the activity because it pleases us internally. Both create strong forces that lead us to behave in certain ways. However, intrinsic motivation is generally considered to be more long-lasting than the other. As I said, extrinsic motivation is external. It's the desire to behave in a certain way in order to obtain some kind of external reward. A child, for example, who regularly does small jobs around the house, does them not because she enjoys taking out the garbage or doing the dishes, but because she knows if she does these things, she'll be given a small amount of money for doing them. But how motivated would the child be to continue doing the work if her parents suddenly stopped giving her money for it? With intrinsic or internal motivation, we want to do something because we enjoy it or get a sense of accomplishment from it. Most people who are internally motivated get pleasure from the activity, so they just feel good about doing it. For example, I go to the gym several times a week. I don't go because I'm training for a marathon or anything. I just enjoy it. I have more energy after I exercise, and I know it's good for my health, so it makes me feel good about myself. And that's what's kept me going there for the past 5 years.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain the two types of motivation.
You got 30 seconds to prepare your response.
¿Me puedes ver o está haciendo mi cámara atrás?
For a time, I was looking at some bananas in there, but right now I'm looking at...
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay, so now you can start speaking.
Okay, the lecture is about the psychology class. To start, the lecture describes what do we do, the things that we usually do, and what motivate us to do these things. First of all, is two types of what motivates or what we do these things. One is extrinsic and intrinsic. The extrinsic is the external, and it shares external objective, and with we know a price after we do the things. And then the intrinsic, that is, we do the things because we enjoy that, and we do because we feel a pleasure of doing that.
Okay, great. So I like the way you organized it. You were keeping the structure. And I also like the way you manage your time, though it could have been better. So what I can tell you at the beginning, when you say the lecture is about, you don't need to tell me whether it's a psychology or biology or business class. Just tell me what you have in the question. You will have a good look at what the lecture was about. So you can say the lecture is about the two types of motivation. And then you're gonna say, don't mention me what the types are. So just say, first, the professor starts by talking about extrinsic motivation, which is, and then you explain, when we get motivated by external forces. Now, the thing that you're forgetting are the examples. You don't want to forget that. So you can say, for instance, the professor explains how a child does the course because they are motivated by, I don't know, because they get money, I don't know, or whatever. And then the other one about she going to the gym, right? Don't forget the examples, save time at the introduction. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So just careful with the structure.
Okay.
Okay, then let's see if we have time to do one more. I'm gonna hurry. Okay, we're gonna do this one. It's gonna be biology, a bit harder, but I'm sure you got it.
To part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
A lot of plants and animals live near the surface of the ocean, and that means there's a lot of food near the surface because there are lots of plants and animals to eat. But if you go down to the deepest parts of the ocean, it's cold and dark, and there's not a lot living down there, so food is very scarce. So organisms that live down at these great depths have developed special adaptations to help them survive in this environment where food is so hard to find. For example, many deep-sea organisms have body features that enable them to eat prey that are larger than themselves. A good example, there's a species of eel that has an enormous mouth and a large stomach that's capable of expanding. And these unusual features allow this eel to eat prey larger than itself. That's a big advantage, because if the eel eats something big, that's a lot of food, a lot of nutrition. So the eel can go for quite a while before it has to find food again. Another helpful adaptation in some deep-sea organisms is the ability to generate light. And some organisms use that light to help them capture food. For example, there's a kind of fish called the anglerfish, and on its head, this fish has a little structure that produces light, that glows in the dark. This little structure, this little light, is positioned close to the fish's mouth. Other fish are attracted to this light. They think it's something small they can eat, so they swim straight toward it, and that brings them close enough for the anglerfish to capture them and eat them.
Using the examples of the eel and the anglerfish, explain two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the deepest parts of the ocean.
Okay, now you can start preparing your response. Okay, so you're ready? Please start speaking now.
Okay. The lecture is about the adaptations that the species needs to survive. To start, the professor mentioned that all species have a large stomach, and this is a good advantage because they eat a lot of food and they have space to eat more. And the second example that the professor mentioned is the anglerfish, that this species generate light, and the light helps to catch the other fishes, and then they eat them. They attract to eat. They search food with the help of light.
Okay, Hermia, you know what? I think that was really good, and it was actually a really hard task. I was a bit nervous for you, but you did just fine. At the end, you got a bit lost. You didn't know what to say, but if that happens, don't laugh, don't say anything in Spanish, just do a conclusion or something. Don't forget your examples. To quickly mention that, for instance, the eel, you didn't mention it. So read the question and you can just say, the way that you explained it was perfect. You know, they have a bigger stomach, and then you can say such as the eel, and then you move on to the next one. So
Okay.
just that, but perfect.
Okay, teacher.
Okay, Romina, so I'll see you next class.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, Jasmila. So today we're practicing task 4, which is the one where you just have the lecture there and you have to summarize. Remember that the lecture has a short introduction, which you don't really care that much about. It's just like filler information that you don't need. And then you have the subtopics, which are the important stuff, the subtopics and the examples. So you want to...
Okay.
Do you remember this one?
Yeah, it's two subtopics, right?
Yeah, 2 subtopics. And each subtopic has an example. Each subtopic has an example.
Yeah, and the template is like an academic article, right? Or not?
This is the template. The lecture is about, and then the general topic, and then you can avoid this part if you want because it takes some time. And then you say, to start, the lecture describes in the first subtopic, explain an example. Then the professor goes on to explain second topic, explain example.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do the first one. Okay.
Lecture in a psychology class.
Why do we do the things we do? What drives us to participate in certain activities, to buy a certain car, or even to choose a certain career? In other words, what motivates us to do what we do? Well, in studies of motivation, psychologists distinguish between 2 very different types. Our reasons for doing something, our motivations, can be extrinsic. In other words, based on some kind of external reward, like praise or money. Or they can be intrinsic, meaning we engage in the activity because it pleases us internally. Both create strong forces that lead us to behave in certain ways. However, intrinsic motivation is generally considered to be more long-lasting than the other. As I said, extrinsic motivation is external. It's the desire to behave in a certain way in order to obtain some kind of external reward. A child, for example, who regularly does small jobs around the house, does them not because she enjoys taking out the garbage or doing the dishes, but because she knows if she does these things, she'll be given a small amount of money for doing them. But how motivated would the child be to continue doing the work if her parents suddenly stopped giving her money for it? With intrinsic or internal motivation, we want to do something because we enjoy it or get a sense of accomplishment from it. Most people who are internally motivated get pleasure from the activity, so they just feel good about doing it. For example, I go to the gym several times a week. I don't go because I'm training for a marathon or anything. I just enjoy it. I have more energy after I exercise, and I know it's good for my health, so it makes me feel good about myself. And that's what's kept me going there for the past 5 years.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain the 2 types of motivation.
Okay. So now you get 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay. So now you can start speaking.
The lecture is about why we do things and what is our motivation to do things. The professor explained two types of motivation in our behavior and in that have influence in our decisions. The first one is eccentric, that means external motivations. For example, when a child help in house and they receive from their parents some money for him or for her. And the second one is intrinsic motivation. That means it's an internal motivation. It is when we enjoy to do things and it help us to feel good. For example, when someone go to the gym, it is good for herself or himself.
Okay. Okay, great. I noticed that you went over a bit of time. So let's talk about how to save some time. At the beginning, I noticed that you were explaining it maybe a bit too much. So what you can just say is, it's gotta be as quick as possible. So you can just tell me, the lecture is about two types of motivation. And that's it. Don't tell me anything else. And then you say first, or to start, the lecture describes extrinsic motivation, which is, and then you explain that, okay? So at the beginning, save as much time as you can because this is a race. Now, with the examples, I can tell you, try to be a bit more accurate. So for instance, the second example wasn't exactly about anyone going to the gym, but the professor, how or why the professor goes to the gym. So you can tell me, then the professor, or I don't know, the professor, to illustrate, she mentions how she goes to the gym because she likes it and she enjoys it. Okay, so be a bit more accurate. Remember that when you have pronouns, though you did just right, you said his or her, he or she, so it works for you. I don't think you have any trouble there. I was gonna say, use they in plural, but I think it works, so you can just keep up doing that. And yeah, just that. There was something else. Careful with indefinite pronouns. For instance, you said when someone go to the gym. Remember that those indefinite pronouns are like third person. So when someone goes to the gym, or anyone goes, or when everybody goes, careful with those. Okay. Any questions?
No, just I need to know what are my faults so I can do a review of that point. That's good for me.
Yes, exactly. Okay, then let's listen to this one.
Okay.
Listen to part of a lecture in a marine biology.
Live near the surface of the ocean, and that means there's a lot of food near the surface because there are lots of plants and animals to eat. But if you go down to the deepest parts of the ocean, it's cold and dark, and there's not a lot living down there, so food is very scarce. So organisms that live down at these great depths have developed special adaptations to help them survive in this environment where food is so hard to find. For example, many deep-sea organisms have body features that enable them to eat prey that are larger than themselves. A good example, there's a species of eel that has an enormous mouth and a large stomach that's capable of expanding. And these unusual features allow this eel to eat prey larger than itself. That's a big advantage, because if the eel eats something big, that's a lot of food, a lot of nutrition. So the eel can go for quite a while before it has to find food again. Another helpful adaptation in some deep-sea organisms is the ability to generate light. And some organisms use that light to help them capture food. For example, there's a kind of fish called the anglerfish, and on its head, this fish has a little structure that produces light, that glows in the dark. This little structure, this little light, is positioned close to the fish's mouth. Other fish are attracted to this light. They think it's something small they can eat. so they swim straight toward it. And that brings them close enough for the anglerfish to capture them and eat them.
Using the examples of the eel and the anglerfish, explain two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the deepest parts of the ocean.
Okay. Now you get 30 to prepare. Okay. So if you're ready, please start speaking now.
The lecture is about how animals survive in the deeper part of the ocean and how they get their food. The first one example of adaptation that the professor explains, because there are two types of adaptation that animals use. The first one is when they have a specific structure, and for example, the eelfish that is a big animal and can get food and save energy with that. And the second type of adaptation is when a fish that is the English fish use a light to attract food.
Okay, great.
It was so hard.
It was hard. Yeah, all those biology topics are gonna be hard. So maybe you can practice it now. Because yeah, I know it's hard. But you did just fine. I think, it was hard, but you did just fine. Maybe balance a bit more your time. Again, try to save time at the end. At the beginning, I noticed that 30 seconds you're dedicating to just that intro. So read the question. The question was two types of adaptations. Let's listen again.
Adaptations that help animals survive in the deepest parts of the ocean.
Two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the ocean. That's it. And then say to start, the lecture describes physical structures, which I don't know, that some animals use to eat more. And you can say, for instance, you have the eel, whose stomach gets expanded to even eat more than, I don't know, another animal larger than themselves. Then the professor goes on to explain how some animals generate light. To illustrate, she mentions how and here you have it in the question, how the anglerfish have some light in their head and the legs. Okay, so just focus on finding this, expanding and generating light, anglerfish and summarizing this a bit more.
Okay.
And don't confuse like the two topics with the example. So at the beginning you were saying for example, the first example is how they generate light. So that's not an example, right? The example is the eel. So careful with that.
Okay.
Okay, Jasmine. So I'll see you next class.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Hi there, Sergio.
Hello, teacher.
Hi. Okay, so today we're practicing task 4, which is the last one. Remember that in this task, you just have a lecture that you will listen to. And in the lecture, you have at the beginning a short introduction, sometimes not that short, to be honest, but you don't really care that much about that. What you gotta focus on is the subtopics, because that lecture is gonna be having 2 subtopics. So the structure looks something like this. You have a short intro, the topic, subtopic 1, and then example, subtopic 2, and its example. And then you just have to follow the same structure in your response. You say the lecture is about, I don't know, product demand. To start, the lecture describes substitute goods, which are products that substitute each other. For instance, you have butter and margarine. Then the professor explains complement goods, which are products that complement each other. Two illustration mentions compact discs and CD players. Okay, so keep the same structure, 2 subtopics and 2 examples. Okay, you remember?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start with the first example. Let's listen to it. Here it goes.
To speak. Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology.
Why do the things we do? What drives us to participate in certain activities, to buy a certain car, or even to choose a certain career? In other words, what motivates us to do what we do? Well, in studies of motivation, psychologists distinguish between 2 very different types. Our reasons for doing something, our motivations, can be extrinsic. In other words, based on some kind of external reward, like praise or money. Or they can be intrinsic, meaning we engage in the activity because it pleases us internally. Both create strong forces that lead us to behave in certain ways. However, intrinsic motivation is generally considered to be more long-lasting than the other. As I said, extrinsic motivation is external. It's the desire to behave in a certain way in order to obtain some kind of external reward. A child, for example, who regularly does small jobs around the house, does them not because she enjoys taking out the garbage or doing the dishes, but because she knows if she does these things, she'll be given a small amount of money for doing them. But how motivated would the child be to continue doing the work if her parents suddenly stopped giving her money for it? With intrinsic or internal motivation, we want to do something because we enjoy it or get a sense of accomplishment from it. Most people who are internally motivated get pleasure from the activity, so they just feel good about doing it. For example, I go to the gym several times a week. I don't go because I'm training for a marathon or anything. I just enjoy it. I have more energy after I exercise, and I know it's good for my health, so it makes me feel good about myself. And that's what's kept me going there for the past 5 years.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain the 2 types of motivation.
Okay, so now you get 30 seconds to prepare your response.
Teacher, can I repeat the first 30 seconds of the lecture? I couldn't hear very well.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Internet is bad.
No worries. Yeah, we can do that.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
Why do we do the things we do? What drives us to participate in certain activities, to buy a certain car, or even to choose a certain career? In other words, what motivates us to do what we do? Well, in studies of motivation, psychologists distinguish between 2 very different types. Our reasons for doing something, our motivations, can be extrinsic. In other words, based on some kind of external reward, like praise or money. Or they can be intrinsic, meaning we engage in the activity because it pleases us internally. Both create strong forces that lead us to behave in certain ways. However, intrinsic motivation is generally considered to be more long-lasting than the other. As I said, extrinsic motivation is...
Okay, is that okay?
Yes.
Or you want to continue listening? Yeah.
Sorry?
I was saying, or would you prefer to continue listening?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Just tell me, no worries.
External. It's the desire to behave in a certain way in order to obtain some kind of external reward. A child, for example, who regularly does small jobs around the house, does them not because she enjoys taking out the garbage or doing the dishes, but because she knows if she does these things, she'll be given a small amount of money for doing them. But how motivated would the child be to continue doing the work if her parents suddenly stopped giving her money for it? With intrinsic or internal motivation, we want to do something because we enjoy it or get a sense of accomplishment from it. Most people who are internally motivated get pleasure from the activity, so they just feel good about doing it. For example, I go to the gym several times a week. I don't go because I'm training for a marathon or anything. I just enjoy it. I have more energy after I exercise, and I know it's good for my health, so it makes me feel good about myself. And that's what's kept me going there for the past 5 years.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain the two types of motivation.
Okay. So now you have 30 seconds to prepare your response. All right, so if you're ready, please start speaking now.
The lecture was about what motivates us to do the things. So the professor did said about two types of psychology, about motivation. The first one was about the external motivation, and the second, the internal motivation. The external motivation is about the things or the reward that could gain us when we do something. She gave an example about the children and the money. And the second is about the internal motivation. It's about our what we think about the things we do. So the example could be go to the gym. It's great for our health, and it would be great for us too.
Okay, great. So I think that was a good start. I like that you remember how the structure went and everything. So that's now some little things. So first of all, try to maybe save a bit more time at the beginning. You don't really have to explain that much. A tip that I can give you for telling me your lecture is about, you can just read the question and you can say, the lecture is about two types of motivation. Then you start right off. First, the professor talks about intrinsic motivation, which is when we do something because we like it or enjoy it. And then you tell me the example, right? For instance, she mentions how children, or I think how she goes to the gym. I don't remember which one was for which one. But basically that, at the beginning, save some time. Second thing, your reporting verbs, like the lecture was about, the professor said, she gave an example. I like that you have the right grammar, you're using the right tenses, but it will be better if it's in the simple present because you're kind of like a reporter, So he says, she says, so in the simple present will be better. And maybe be a bit more accurate with the examples. Don't maybe try to explain them or elaborate on them a bit more. So that's why you need to save time at the beginning, However, I think that's a good strategy that you used because you measure your time. And for instance, at the beginning, you said, she gave an example about children and money. So I like that, when you don't have that much time, you can for sure do that and it works. But if you had had a bit more time, then it would have been maybe a bit more complete if you would have explained. So so she explains how children that do chores because they want something out of it, like money, are doing it because of external forces. So a bit more explanation. And with the second one, the same. You said an example could be going to the gym, careful with the gerund, but the example actually is not just anyone going to the gym, but the professor going to the gym. So you could say, she mentions, or to illustrate, she mentions how she goes to the gym because she enjoys it and it gives her pleasure and satisfaction. Okay, so maybe more accuracy with examples. And yeah, I think that's it. So is that okay? Any questions?
No.
Okay, good. Now let's go for the second one. This one is gonna be a bit more hard. I mean, a bit harder. Sorry, because it's biology. But I'm sure you can do. You can do it. So let's.
To part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
A lot of plants and animals live near the surface of the ocean, and that means there's a lot of food near the surface because there are lots of plants and animals to eat. But if you go down to the deepest parts of the ocean, it's cold and dark, and there's not a lot living down there, so food is very scarce. So organisms that live down at these great depths have developed special adaptations to help them survive in this environment where food is so hard to find. For example, many deep-sea organisms have body features that enable them to eat prey that are larger than themselves. A good example, there's a species of eel that has an enormous mouth and a large stomach that's capable of expanding. And these unusual features allow this eel to eat prey larger than itself. That's a big advantage, because if the eel eats something big, that's a lot of food, a lot of nutrition. So the eel can go for quite a while before it has to find food again. Another helpful adaptation in some deep-sea organisms is the ability to generate light. And some organisms use that light to help them capture food. For example, there's a kind of fish called the anglerfish, and on its head, this fish has a little structure that produces light, that glows in the dark. This little structure, this little light, is positioned close to the fish's mouth. Other fish are attracted to this light. They think it's something small they can eat, so they swim straight toward it, and that brings them close enough for the anglerfish to capture them and eat them.
Using the examples of the eel and the anglerfish, explain two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the deepest parts of the ocean.
Look at the question. Two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the ocean or in the deepest parts of the ocean. So now you have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so now you can start speaking.
Okay. The lecture was about a biology class when the teacher talked about the plants and the different species that live in the deep ocean. One of these animals was the eel. It's one of these animals who live in the deep ocean, and she explained how it survived in that place. It has a big mouth and a big stomach, so it can eat different plants or food, and it can survive. It could be unusual characteristics of this animal. And the second is about the angler. It has the ability of generate glow and survive in the deep ocean. So these species have these different characteristics.
Okay, great. So that was a hard one, and I think you did just fine. So yeah, good structure at the beginning. Again, you can just repeat the question. At the beginning, you just said, you said the professor talks about how different animals are in the ocean. So just tell me two types of adaptations that help animals in the ocean. Okay, I like that you're using the right pronouns for animals. That's something that not a lot of people do. And careful with the subtopics, right? It wasn't the animals already. So the first subtopic is, physical characteristics like big stomach, big mouth. And the second subtopic is generating light, like the anglerfish. So the animals are the examples, and the subtopics are different ones. Okay, but grammar and everything was good, so nothing to say. Okay, Sergio, is that okay?
Yes, teacher.
All right, then I'll see you next class.
Okay, bye, teacher.
Bye-bye. And hi, Ruben.
Hi, teacher.
Hi there. So today we're going to be practicing task 4, which is the one where you just have the lecture. Remember the structure of the lecture. It is, I mean, you have a topic, an introduction at the beginning, which is not that important. You will find that in the question, so you can just repeat that. But what you really need to care about is the subtopics. So you will have 2 subtopics, and each subtopic will have some details, an example. So that's what you really want to hear, what you really want to catch when you're listening. And in your response, you structure it in the same order. So you start by giving a short intro, the lecture is about, and then you say to start, the lecture describes the first subtopic, which is explain a bit more, and then the example. Then the professor explains, relax, okay, the same thing. So do you remember how this works?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, that's good. So let's start with the first task then. Here's the one.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
Why do we do the things we do? What drives us to participate in certain activities, to buy a certain car, or even to choose a certain career? In other words, what motivates us to do what we do? Well, in studies of motivation, psychologists distinguish between 2 very different types. Our reasons for doing something, our motivations, can be extrinsic. In other words, based on some kind of external reward, or money. Or they can be intrinsic, meaning we engage in the activity because it pleases us internally. Both create strong forces that lead us to behave in certain ways. However, intrinsic motivation is generally considered to be more long-lasting than the other. As I said, extrinsic motivation is external. It's the desire to behave in a certain way in order to obtain some kind of external reward. A child, for example, who regularly does small jobs around the house, does them not because she enjoys taking out the garbage or doing the dishes, but because she knows if she does these things, she'll be given a small amount of money for doing them. But how motivated would the child be to continue doing the work if her parents suddenly stopped giving her money for it? With intrinsic or internal motivation, we want to do something because we enjoy it or get a sense of accomplishment from it. Most people who are internally motivated get pleasure from the activity, so they just feel good about doing it. For example, I go to the gym several times a week. I don't go because I'm training for a marathon or anything. I just enjoy it. I have more energy after I exercise, and I know it's good for my health, so it makes me feel good about myself. And that's what's kept me going there for the past 5 years.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain the 2 types of motivation.
Okay. So now you get 30 seconds to prepare your response. All right. So if you're ready, please start speaking now.
Okay, the lecture was about what motivates people to do anything. In this case, it is divided in 2. To start, the lecture explained the intrinsic motivation, which is related with external rewards. In this case, the professor gives example which have money such as a reward, a woman who clean a house. And then the other motivation is internal. In this type of motivation, the person get pleasure with that activity, and for that reason, she gave an example to go to the gym, where she has more energy than other. He has more energy.
Okay. All right, great. Well done. So I like the way you managed your time. I like that at the beginning you didn't take that much time. You know, given the intro. So you just said the lecture is about what motivates people to do what they do. Perfect. And then you said we have two types of motivation: intrinsic, and then you started. You know, the intrinsic one is. So that's a really good way to start. Okay, you had a clear definition for the intrinsic one. The example was also good, well explained. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a woman though. I think it was about a child that cleans or that does the chores in the house.
Yeah,
So, yeah, right.
I didn't listen to the example. I didn't understand. Child? No, or child. What was? Sorry.
It was a child. You know what a child is?
No.
Okay. So a child is the singular of children. You know children?
Yeah, okay.
So a kid, kids, child, children.
Okay.
This is singular and plural. So yeah, but it's okay. You know, that's something, a detail that I don't think they would mind. So that's good. Okay. Careful with the third person. This irregular plural is the same as child, children, you know, person, people. You said, for instance, the person gets pleasure, you know, the person gets pleasure, or someone gets pleasure. And I noticed that some of your reporting verbs are in the past, the same as before. So she gave an example, the lecture was about, try to make them in the present. Like she gives an example, she provides an example, the lecture is about, because it's like you're reporting it. I don't know. And yeah, I think, you know, you really got it, what it takes, so you can really have a good response. Just careful with those grammar maybe, and you will be good. Okay. All right, so now we're gonna do another one. This one is gonna be on biology, which makes it a bit harder, but I'm sure you can deal with it. So let's see. Here it goes.
Listen to part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
A lot of plants and animals live near the surface of the ocean, and that means there's a lot of food near the surface because there are lots of plants and animals to eat. But if you go down to the deepest parts of the ocean, it's cold and dark, and there's not a lot living down there, so food is very scarce. So organisms that live down at these great depths have developed special adaptations to help them survive in this environment where food is so hard to find. Deep-sea organisms have features that enable them to eat prey that are larger than themselves. A good example, there's a species of eel that has an enormous mouth and a large stomach that's capable of expanding. And these unusual features allow this eel to eat prey larger than itself. That's a big advantage, because if the eel eats something big, that's a lot of food, a lot of nutrition. So the eel can go for quite a while before it has to find food again. Another helpful adaptation in some deep-sea organisms is the ability to generate light. And some organisms use that light to help them capture food. For example, a kind of fish called the anglerfish. On its head, this fish has a little structure that produces light, glows in the dark. This little structure, this little light, is positioned close to the fish's mouth. Other fish are attracted to this light. They think it's something small they can eat, so they swim straight toward it, and that brings them close enough for the anglerfish to capture them and eat them.
Using the examples of the eel and the anglerfish, explain two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the deepest parts of the ocean.
Now you have 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so if you're ready now, please start speaking.
The lecture was about how certain marine animals get their food. In this case, the professor gives two examples, which has two different ways to get food. In the first one was the eelfish, which has a special structure, a large stomach, and it find a way to get its food. It look for the for that food, and the other is the angular fish, which has the ability to capture their food, and the structures allows it to attract different animals, and which allow it to eat itself.
Okay. Okay, great. So, all right. So nice. You're gatekeeping the structure. You're saving time at the beginning. I think you got that part down. Maybe you can change the transitions you're using. So, for instance, you're saying the other one is, or just you can, instead of saying that, you could say, furthermore, there is the anglerfish which does this noise. So use those. I mean, make a use of those words that look fancy.
Okay.
Now, what else? Careful with grammar, especially if you're talking about animals. You keep the right pronouns. That's really good. It, perfect. But remember that you need the third person for remove the verb, right? It looks for food that way. So practice that, talking about animals with it and the third person of the verb. So it looks, it finds, it eats. That's what you need, maybe. And yeah, I think, everything else is going good. Okay. So have you got any questions?
Yeah, I could listen the first example in the last lecture. I don't know if you can explain me what was it.
The first example in this one?
In the last lecture.
The one about the seabirds, or not seabird, the fish. Yeah, this one? Okay, so I think the first one was how this animal, the eel, has a big stomach, and that, gives their, gives the animal the advantage of eating more and having more nutrients or so. So basically it's like a physical thing that they have to save energy or gain energy maybe. So they basically have adapted themselves to make their stomach expand, and that way they can eat more and they can survive. So I think that was. Yeah. And the other one, the anglerfish, was, I think that actually, I think the eel, you explained it well. The anglerfish was the one that generated light. So I think they have like some light in their head, and that makes them attract their food. So other animals go and catch the light, and they are caught by the anglerfish. So I think that for this one. Okay, right. Any other question?
No.
Okay. So then I'll see you next session.
Okay. Bye, teacher.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day. Hi, Fernanda. Hi. There. Okay. So today we're going to be practicing task 4, which let me show you. Okay, this is the one. So in this task, remember that you got just only a lecture, and in the lecture you will have at the beginning a short introduction, which is, to be honest, not that important. So don't pay attention, but in your response you don't gotta mention it that much. So you got that introduction in there, and then you got 2 subtopics. So that lecture is going to be divided into 2. You will have 2 different subtopics, and each subtopic will have some examples or some details in there. And that's the most important part. And in your response, you follow the same structure. You start with an intro in which you're going to tell me what the topic is, which is probably, by the way, going to be in the question. So the lecture is about product demand. To start, the lecture describes, and then you tell me the first subtopic, substitute goods, which are explained, and then you get the example. For instance, you have butter and margarine. Then the professor explains, and then you have the second one, the same thing. So that's pretty much it. Do you remember how it works? Remember this task? Okay, that's good. So then let's start with the first example. This is going to be the one. Okay, somewhere. All right then. So take some notes. Here's the lecture.
Response and 60 seconds to speak. Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
Why do we do the things we do? What drives us to participate in certain activities? To buy a certain car or even choose a certain career? In other words, what motivates us to do what we do? Well, in studies of motivation, psychologists distinguish between 2 very different types. Our reasons for doing something, our motivations, can be extrinsic, in other words, on some external reward like praise or money. Or they can be intrinsic, meaning we engage in the activity because it pleases us internally. Both create strong forces that lead us to behave in certain ways. However, intrinsic motivation is generally considered to be more long-lasting than the other. As I said, extrinsic motivation is external. It's the desire to behave in a certain way in order to obtain some kind of external reward. A child, for example, who regularly does small jobs around the house, does them not because she enjoys taking out the garbage or doing the dishes, but because she knows if she does these things, she'll be given a small amount of money for doing them. But how motivated would the child be to continue doing the work if her parents suddenly stopped giving her money for it? With intrinsic or internal motivation, we want to do something because we enjoy it or get a sense of accomplishment from it. Most people who are internally motivated get pleasure from the activity, so they just feel good about doing it. For example, I go to the gym several times a week. I don't go because I'm training for a marathon or anything. I just enjoy it. I have more energy after I exercise, and I know it's good for my health, so it makes me feel good about myself. And that's what's kept me going there for the past 5 years.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain the 2 types of motivation.
So now you get 30 seconds to prepare your response. Okay, so if you're ready, you can start speaking now.
The lecture is about a psychology class, and the professor says why we do the things we do, like choose a certain career. And he talks about two types of motivations, extrinsic and intrinsic. The extrinsic is about do something that you that do something for money, like the recompense. And for example, a child, they don't like to do like cook and these things, but like I'm motivated with money. And the other is intrinsic, that is activity that you feel good. It is more for pleasure. For example, go to the gym. This enjoys and is good for the health.
Okay, nice, great. I noticed that you do remember how this was. So perfect. At the beginning though, okay, so some little things I took notes on. At the beginning, for instance, you said the lecture's about, and you tell me a psychology class. You can do that, but you can tell me the lecture is from a psychology class. However, that's not necessary to do because they are gonna mention it at the beginning, you know, in the instructions, you will have that. So you can just write off tell me what the topic is. You can start by saying, look at the question, that's the big tip. The lecture is about the two types of motivation, and that's it. And then you tell me, don't summarize what they are, don't tell me. The first one is intrinsic and the second one is extrinsic. And then again, the first one, just tell me the two types of motivation. And then you say, first, the professor explains extrinsic motivation, which is when you do something for an external reward, such as money. For example, your example was great about the child. Okay, what else? Okay, careful with the gerunds. For instance, I noticed that at the end you said, for example, go to the gym, right? It will be, for example, going to the gym. Careful with gerunds. And be a bit more specific. You could say, for example, the professor explains how she goes to the gym. And she does it because she likes it and she feels good with herself. And I don't know. So just that, you know, save time at the beginning, leave time until the end. Maybe use some transitions instead of the other is. Furthermore, she explains, okay, so to give it a bit of life, maybe. But that's just it. So is that okay? Any questions? All right. So let's go with the second one. It's going to be a bit harder. It's a biology one. Let's hear it.
Listen to part of a lecture in a marine biology class.
A lot of plants and animals live near the surface of the ocean, and that means there's a lot of food near the surface because there are lots of plants and animals to eat. But if you go down to the deepest parts of the ocean, it's cold and dark, and there's not a lot living down there, so food is very scarce. So organisms that live down at these great depths have developed special adaptations to help them survive in this environment where food is so hard to find. For example, many deep-sea organisms have body features that enable them to eat prey that are larger than themselves. A good example, there's a species of eel that has an enormous mouth and a large stomach that's capable of expanding. And these unusual features allow this eel to eat prey larger than itself. That's a big advantage, because if the eel eats something big, that's a lot of food, a lot of nutrition. So the eel can go for quite a while before it has to find food again. Another helpful adaptation in some deep-sea organisms is the ability to generate light. And some organisms use that light to help them capture food. For example, there's a kind of fish called the anglerfish, and on its head, this fish has a little structure that produces light, that glows in the dark. This little structure, this little light, is positioned close to the fish's mouth. Other fish are attracted to this light. They think it's something small they can eat, so they swim straight toward it, and that brings them close enough for the anglerfish to capture them and eat them.
Using the examples of the eel and the anglerfish, explain two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the deepest parts of the ocean.
Okay, you have the names in that question. Eel and anglerfish. All right. So please prepare your response. You got 30 seconds. Okay. Now you can start speaking.
The lecture is about the types of survive. The professor mentions that the animals live in the surface that is cold and dark, and also the food is scarce. It is a special adaptation. For example, the species of eel that they have a large mouth, and if they eat something big, also the nutrition was very big. Furthermore, the other type is generate life. For example, a fish that has a litter structure also have a litter life.
Okay, great, perfect. So at the end, if you have some extra time, you can just say, so those are the two types of, and just tell me the beginning again, those are the two types of adaptations that help animals survive in the ocean. So great. I really like your response now. I think it was a lot more organized. You were using those transitions. It was a hard one, but you did it. I mean, I think you just did fine. Nothing to say really, And maybe in the second example, the reason why you were having some extra time is because you could have explained a bit more. So you told me about the anglerfish, but you didn't say what exactly they do. You could just say, so they have a light that helps them catch their food. So that explanation maybe was missing. But I think you're really good in this task. Maybe regarding intonation, just try to sound a bit more short, like you know what you're saying. Try to say like it were facts, because you sound a bit more like you're hesitating or you're maybe not so sure about what you're saying. But you did just fine. You got everything right, so you can be confident and sure. Okay. All right, Fernanda. Have you got any questions?
No.
All right. So then I'll see you next session.
Yes, but I have a question. This Friday, right? This Friday.
Yeah, it is Friday.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that viene espacio.
Oh, okay. Let me see. I have it right now. If it's like this one, you can just add it at the end. Not
Yes.
sure. Okay, it's until. Okay. So yeah, I know what we can do. Maybe we can add one room at 6:45, 15 minutes before. Okay, so I'm gonna create a table here. 5, so that it's there. Please don't forget. Okay, sorry. Okay, so 6:45. Yeah, 15 minutes before. Yeah. Now I'll write down your name. Okay, then. So I'll see you then. I'll see you on Friday.
Bye.
Bye bye, take care.